smart people need to keep up with the trend and think about what resources they have available to them. And first party data is now becoming a forefront of a resource. So brands need to be future planning. They need to be thinking about, am I collecting my first party data right? Am I housing it properly? Am I prepared to leverage it? Do I need to find partners to partner up with? Do I have all the technologies to plug my gaps? So it's creating a hassle for our industry. Hey everyone, Kelly McGuire, co-founder at Vujaday Digital.
Welcome to Contrary to Popular Opinion, a podcast hosted by Vujaday Digital. In each episode, we bring you provocative topics and novel perspectives around leadership, business, and marketing that defy the norms because exponential growth demands unconventional thinking and visionary action. So open your mind and let's get into this week's episode.
Hey everybody, this is Todd. I'm Kelly's co-founder, and I'm super excited about today's topic because it's why the internet is free and why everybody hates that. So, Kelly, let's kick this one around, right? We've been talking about this for years as digital marketers relative to how we take an advertiser's creative assets and use the targeting capabilities available in Google and Meta and programmatic DSPs. And that enables us to put ads presumably in front of people that are somewhat the right cohort or demographic or psychographic or a combination of thereof. And for some reason, people don't like that. But that's why the internet's free, is because of advertising. So the cookie has been talked about, right? This is like mobile. We talked about mobile for like 5 years, kept every year saying this is going to be the year of mobile. It does look like the cookie is actually going to be phased out in its current form by the end of this year of the last holdout, which is Google and the Chrome browser. I know you just came back from a couple of big conferences around this, got to hear a lot about this. Your early POV on this to me is kind of funny because it basically sounds like, yeah, this will go away and probably more pervasive stuff is going to take its place. So let's talk about that. So just sort of give the listeners sort of the lay of the land on what your perspective is on the cookie in general. Why has it been important? Does it matter that it goes away or not? And then I've got more questions for you we'll go through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about this. And I think it's important to distinction that it's the default cookie that's going away, right? You know, the concept of the cookie as a whole, I don't think is going away. I think just the assumption that when you go somewhere and you get cookied and that exists and you don't have a lot of say over it, I think that's really what's going away.
So you're talking about, let's be clear. You're talking about when I go to a website and you get the little bar that pops up that says, to continue browsing, you must accept or choose which cookies or don't accept cookies. You're talking about that.
Yeah. So there's different variations of that. There's the you have to opt in. There's the it default opts you in, but it gives you that choice not to. But most people are lazy and don't. Or there's even versions of the banner that basically say, if you continue on, you are by default, agreeing that you'll have to do this or you got to leave kind of thing. And quite frankly, I've actually personally had experiences where I tend to engage a little bit more and I'll be like, okay, well, it's there. They've now brought it to the forefront. I'll opt out. But there's been a few sites where it hasn't really given me the option. It says you have to accept cookies or not. I've been like, all right, well, I'm not gonna look at your content then. I'll go find somewhere else. I think it all depends on how people feel in the moment. But yeah, so I think the cookie will stay around. That is still going to be a component of how we're tracking data and going through that.
Let's be clear. Let me interrupt. Sorry for the interruption. Let's be clear. You're telling me that when Google says the cookie's going away, it's not actually going away.
Yeah, it's not. The whole cookie's not going away. The default dropped cookie's going away. The cookie is sort of a word that indicates the tracking of your behavior on a site. And that's right. Still going to exist in different ways.
Do you think most people think of it that way? Do you think when they see all this hype about the cookie going away, that people are thinking, well, it's not really going away. It's just the default is going away?
No, I think that highlights kind of what my takeaway in going to these conferences was, which is I think people do think of it as at a very high level. Yeah, simplistic terms of, okay, cookies are going away. So now I'm not being tracked. I get my privacy back. And in going to these conferences, it was very interesting to see the reaction of the industry. And it almost felt like this idea of the cookie going away sort of awoken a sleeping giant, in that most people just had the cookie. And so they just used it and it made everything relatively easy. And they didn't really worry about having to figure out anything much more sophisticated than that. But now there's this threat of it's going away. And so now there's this big scramble of how do we replace the cookie? What do we do? Like, we have to be able to target people. We have to be able to sell things. We've talked about how cookies is why the internet's free and all of that. The reality is advertisers are going to advertise. That's not going to go away. People are going to be convinced to buy things. And there are large, very huge industries and players that are very well incentivized to figure out how to do that, very sophisticated. And my big takeaway at this conference was this whole idea of cookies going away for the idea of getting privacy back is actually going to have the opposite effect. I think from what I'm seeing, people are really putting time and energy and effort into this to start to engage in a much more invasive and pervasive way. Like, it's actually going to create way more data hunger and people saying, how do we learn more? How do we get more? And actually, the really interesting thing that I saw was it's causing these big companies, big and small companies, to now be open to the idea of working together and sharing their data. This concept of pooling and sharing data amongst companies was really big at these conferences. I'm like, man.
Do you mean the brands themselves, or do you mean the tech companies that have all the data storage today?
All of the above. But a lot of the commentary at the conferences was find like-minded brands, find partner. I mean, this is something you and I talked about years ago about there's going to be a marketplace for brands to come together and in sort of Megatron fashion and come together to make one bigger entity, from a data perspective. And this is pushing that further. So again, now you're awakening this giant of people saying, well, okay, we have our data. Let's find more data. Let's get access to it. Let's share it. Let's combine it. Let's use AI to analyze it. And it's all of these things didn't have to happen when it was just like, okay, we have the cookie, we can target. That's good enough. But now it's like, okay, now let's put all our focus in. And it's a huge topic in the AI component and the analyzing of first party data and learning in the behaviors. I mean, the reality is cookie or not, every action that we take creates a digital footprint. The places you go to, you have a phone in your pocket that has GPS on it, tracks everywhere you go. The things you watch, the things you buy, your credit card transactions, the things you subscribe to, the things you like, everything you do leaves digital breadcrumbs. And the cookie was the easiest way to collect those and make them actionable. But just because the cookie goes away doesn't mean people are like, well, we don't get access to those digital footprints anymore. It's just really smart people being like, let's pick up as many of those as possible and let's go make a bunch of money by making it even more, accessible, because there's not this easier way for people to just take for granted and do it.
So I'm still not sure why people would rather have advertising that doesn't pertain to them and is not targeted to them. Because personally, if you're going to see ads, I would think you want ads that are relative to your interests. Like you said, things that the internet knows that I'm browsing or searching or buying or whatever. Like I would want ads that appeal to my interests, not things that don't appeal to my interests. But the argument is data privacy, right? That's with GDPR and California Consumer Privacy and Protection Act, like all these different acts, data privacy, right? So did you get the feeling that like data privacy is just sort of not getting enough of a foothold, or that, like you said, there's just going to be smart people who are going to figure out ways around it. We're just going to continue to chase it. Like, how does the data privacy, maybe even more specifically, does it impact first party data differently than third party data? Think of like Oracle, right? We work with Oracle. They've got 2,500 data points on every consumer in America. Does that go away? Does it get limited? Does it not get refreshed and it becomes stale?
It evolves, right? The genie's out of the bottle when it comes to data, right? I liken it. I think I was watching a documentary about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that. And there was this commentary around data's the new oil, right? Like it is, it's a currency, it's in there. And just like oil, like I guess if we could go back, like probably we'd like to not make our entire economy run and reliant on it. But the reality is it is. Data is a currency. We've talked about these currencies, time and money and all of that. Data is a currency. And so people are going to monetize it. There's too much reliance on it. There's too much industry and mechanism built around it that runs on it. And it's too valuable for it to go away. So I think for your average consumer, there's this idea that I can get my privacy back. I can control my data and go that. And I think it's very wishful thinking. It's just not, it's a great idea in theory, but it's just not going to happen. People are going to find a way to exploit and use and monetize. And again, my view is, you're not taking away someone's cookie and they're being like, okay, I'm going to go hungry now. They're like, well, all right, I'm going to go find a way to, open up a cookie factory and bake my own stuff. You're just getting people to double down on this. And again, you're awakening that giant. And so,
did you see or hear anything relative there about the ad blockers or the browsers that, block the tracking? Is that just such a small percentage of users that it's just not even, it doesn't even matter?
We've talked about it. People don't do it. The people don't.
Some people do it, right? There's some
but
people
not a meaningful enough amount. People are lazy creatures. People want what they, I've described it. Even plenty of times I will go through the time, but if I'm in a hurry and I care about what's on the screen, I just hit accept. I don't want to. It annoys me. I wish I wouldn't, but I do. Everyone does it, even if this is something that matters to you. And that's the reality is the vast majority take the default. They take the easy route. They don't think about it. You complain about it. You want your privacy, but are you going to get off of TikTok? Are you going to get off of Facebook? Are you going to get off of these things that track you? No, you're going to say, accept terms, give me the service that I want, and I'll just complain about it after the fact.
Yeah. So the very small percentage of like the hacker grade level people that know how to just completely rid themselves of tracking is so small it's not even applicable.
And let's be honest, if the people that are taking the time to block ads, they're probably not going to buy your product because of seeing an ad anyway. Like their mindset is already not in that space. Like that's not the person you want to spend your dollars advertising to if it bothers them that much.
So that's an interesting maybe segue. So when we think about the future of digital advertising, and there's going to be, like you said, there's going to be some level of data targeting. What have you heard or read or seen at these conferences that looks like the next sort of evolution of the data practice, right? So for example, we're partners with the Trade Desk. What's their solution to this?
I mean, there's so many things, right? Trade Desk has their UDID, their universal ID. And again, there's all kinds of partnerships.
How does it work? How are they proposing that that's going to actually work? It's not based on a cookie, right?
No, it's not based on a cookie. I mean, it's everything from your mobile device IDs to your device graphs to your opt-in share. I mean, the conversation all revolves around first-party data, the ownership of that people have raised their hand and volunteered and given either by purchasing or consenting or going through the process, that ownership of first-party data. And that's why the sharing of that amongst brands and industries and things is going to be highly facilitated. But we've also seen a decent amount of practice and seen this for a while. This isn't brand new. GDPR has been in place for a while. This is how it's been in Europe for a while. Advertising didn't go away. We run plenty of successful, well-tracked, well-attributed campaigns in the European market, in the Asian markets and things like that. Like there is a way around this. The market finds a way and it adapts. It's everything from contextual targeting to cohort analysis to shared first-party data to UDIDs to mobile devices, to matchback programs to, and the reality is AI amongst everything is part of, there's just not a conference where 75% of it isn't around the concept of AI in some degree or another, but it's going to fill in the gaps. It's going to take these huge existing data sets, these cohort analysis of first party data, and it's going to fill in gaps and it's going to find lookalikes and behaviors and analyze, well, what does it mean if you know this person and what do they share with these other people and what other breadcrumbs can we pick up and attach and say, okay, well, we can infer that this person is this person. Now you're targeting them just as accurately as you were when you were collecting, sometimes inaccurate third-party cookie data, right? So it's not a death knell to the industry. There's nothing's going to be a death knell in the industry. Advertising will persist. It's persisted as the backbone of our economy. It's just smart people need to keep up with the trend and think about what resources they have available to them. And first-party data is now becoming a forefront of a resource. So brands need to be future planning. They need to be thinking about, am I collecting my first-party data right? Am I housing it properly? Am I prepared to leverage it? Do I need to find partners to partner up with? Do I have all the technologies to plug my gaps? So it's creating a hassle for our industry. We definitely have to take a lot of steps that we didn't before with the ease of the cookie, but there's plenty of steps to fill in the gap where we're going to get close enough, if not potentially better than we were before, but you're going to have to be smart and put in the work and have the knowledge base and the time to do it, which I think is interesting when we talk about things like fees and pressure on fees and people wanting things cheaper, but everything we do is getting harder in the meaningful ways sure, it's easier. Maybe ChatGPT writes some copy better for you or analyzes data and reports better. But the real work that we do certainly makes the work and the energy and I would say the level and the seniority of talent a lot better. Like that was another big takeaway I had at these that it will be a huge another topic for another day, but I'll just scratch the surface of, was this idea of media buying as a zero sum outcome, right? You either buy the ads or you don't. And we've had so many debates about this topic. But yeah, sure, AI and ChatGPT and things like that, they might be able to start to take the low level, sort of the grunt work type tasks out of it. But the high level decisioning and the utilization on these types of things, as we take away data, as we take away the low hanging fruit and the easy stuff, it does get replaced with more sophisticated, harder things that take experience and knowledge and understanding and thoughtfulness and time to figure out. And that's going to be really interesting to see how that comes to life as people are like, well, doesn't AI do your job now? Shouldn't I get to pay you half the fee? It's like, well, yeah, it does half of some of the job, but what was one thing now takes us 10 things and a lot of time to figure out the right thing to do. It's all just been replaced by different things.
Yeah, I don't see AI cutting any corners at this point in time. I see it just adding a couple more screwdrivers and hammers to the tool belt, which just means it's just more stuff that we have to use, which takes more time, energy, and skill set mastery to learn how to use it. So I don't see it necessarily creating efficiency in terms of labor hours necessarily. Like you said, there might be companies out there that choose to use it for automation and scale efficiency. And for those who still rely on human intelligence and the ability to detect nuance and things, we'll use it as a tool to complement what we do, but not necessarily to cut our labor hours in half and charge half of what we were charging for the same amount of money or work that we were doing before. So as sort of simplistically as you can, if I'm a brand listening, if I'm a marketer, based on what you've seen up until this point through these most recent conferences, which was the DigiDay and the LiveRamp conference that you were at, for those listening, those are great conferences to check out. What are the top 3, top 5 things you would tell a CMO today on here's how you should be thinking about the cookie sort of going away, but here's all the other things you should be preparing and planning for, and the ways that you'll still be able to, maybe even better ways you'll be able to target your audiences. What would you tell me if I was running a brand and you had to tell me 3 to 5 things?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, the first place to start is start to think about data as a strategy independent of media on its own. A lot of times they're lumped together, and yes, they are hand in hand, but I think that brands and their agency partners need to start be thinking about what's my short and long-term data strategy. How can I prepare now and put infrastructure in place to collect data, to handle data, to supplement data? What partnerships are coming to the table? What networks am I participating in? What shared data opportunities am I uncovering? So just thinking about and preparing and knowing that you can't take it for granted, that you'd have to have a little bit of control of your own destiny, or your agency partner needs to help you have control of your own destiny when it comes to data specifically. Certainly compliance, we're running into compliance things, making sure that everything's compliant and going back and, that you're collecting data and housing data in that. We've definitely run into some things on our side that we've had to help clients with and navigate through on the compliance side of things and being hyper aware of that. And that's only going to get more and more scrutinized. I think that's a big thing to be looking at. There's a lot of legacy things that may not be compliant, or the environment might be shifting and you may not be aware that you've fallen out of compliance with certain things, and knowing that. And then again, just being prepared for the new reality of things that maybe were just taken for granted or were easy. Have to have deeper conversations, segmentation, audience focusing, what signals are available. Just like, again, when we run these campaigns in Europe, it's not just as a matter of audience targeting, right? We have to blend contextual targeting and environment and first party, and what can we go through in terms of actions? Where can we infer? There's you just have to be more creative overall and more mindful about those dollars. When, again, before it was easy to say, well, I want to reach soccer moms and this data provider has a segment of soccer moms. So great, checkbox done. It may just take a little bit more time and mindfulness than what was a little bit oversimplified before.
All right. So I think that's all good stuff for a marketer to think about. A couple things in wrap up. Something I shared with you today that I think would be a great topic for us to talk about coming up soon is Google's new open source marketing mix modeling, Meridian. I do want to talk about things like that because I think it's gonna really impact. Like you said, targeting is one thing, but how do we measure this stuff if this stuff goes away? Is media mix modeling, marketing mix modeling, is that going to be open source? What happens to the big companies that charge a bunch of money for that? And a new thing I think is fun to implement in our ending of our show is, and I'll kick this one off because you're probably not prepared for this, but what is the last ad you saw that you remember and why? And so if you don't have one, I'll tell you what mine is to get you going. So I was scrolling my Instagram feed, and the last ad I saw that I remember today was from a company called Orlo Nutrition. Why do I remember it? I went to advertising school in art and design. It was an all black ad with white copy and in a font that looked very sort of Swedish mid-century modern, or that was my take on it. Thought it was really cool. Don't know anything about the product, but I liked the ad and I remembered it. Can you think of the last ad you saw that you actually remember?
Ooh, off the top of my head, as much as I hate to admit it was probably a TikTok ad of some kind right now. I think I'm getting a lot of like cryptocurrency type things right now, just because I've been interested in kind of what's happening with the bull run of things. So you get a lot, and honestly, you get a lot of kind of scammy ads and things that are not misleading. And I think it's interesting that you asked that question, because I think it highlights why people are complaining about cookies and tracking and why I want to see, because these are the bad actors that we talked about, right? It's the punch the monkey ad. It's the ads that are trying to get you to do things that are a little bit manipulative, that aren't doing what marketing should do, which is connecting you to something that matters in your life, but actually, in fact, trying to maybe, pull one over on you a little bit. And that's where the consumer protection is. And, I'm not oblivious to that. I do take a idealistic view of what should be, but I'm not oblivious to, there are bad actors that don't do things the right way in there. And so, yeah, I think one of those crypto type things is it's coming pervasive on TikTok right now.
Well, for any marketers that are listening, if Kelly and I are a litmus test of one or two and struggle to remember ads because they're not memorable or not getting our attention, well, we're just a litmus test of two. But maybe if you extrapolate that out, it should tell you that advertising needs to work. It needs to be memorable. It needs to be creative. It needs to get our attention. And that's pretty hard to do today. So I'll ask you that on the next show, and it'll be interesting to see if you can recall anything.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.
Everyone.
Thanks for listening to Contrary to Popular Opinion, where we challenge you to think independently, push the limits, and take uncommon action so you can achieve game-changing results in your business and your life. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.